Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Nathan and Crystal Maddox. In Colmasneil, a small town in Tyler County, Texas, with a population of just 563 people. Nathan Maddox and Kristen Westfall's relationship progressed quickly. They lived on nearby streets and shared milestones like their first love and first kiss. Despite their strong bond, Kristen's parents disapproved and tried to end the relationship. Torn between her love and her parents, Kristen initially chose her family. However, everything changed when she discovered she was pregnant. Faced with this reality, her parents decided to accept the situation and permitted the couple to marry, as single motherhood was socially unacceptable. Nathan and Kristen got married in Texas. Shortly after, they bought a house and welcomed their first child, a daughter named Madison. However, family life wasn't as idyllic as in the movies. Nathan had to work hard to support them. Owning and maintaining a house was expensive. So he took a job in Montana, away from home. As a young husband and father, he tried to visit Kristen and Madison as often as possible. He regularly sent money home, believing that he had a happy family waiting for him. He loved Kristen and Madison and thought they were the perfect little family. One day, when he returned home from Montana, he immediately noticed the house was empty. Most of the belongings were gone, and there was a note on the kitchen table. In a few brief lines, Kristen informed that she was leaving. Her reason seemed odd. She claimed she didn't know where her husband was, who he was with, or when he would return. She wrote that she was unhappy, but this was untrue because Kristen knew Nathan was in Montana for work. He called regularly to check on her and their daughter, and he sent them money regularly. The most painful part was that she took Madison with her, and Nathan was now forbidden from seeing his daughter. Kristen did something very unkind. She went to the police station and provided false information to gain full custody of her daughter, claiming that the child's father was not supportive or interested. Nathan was aware that his ex-wife and daughter had moved back to her parents' home. He made several attempts to visit his daughter Madison, but the Westfall family was firm in their refusal. They were happy to have gotten rid of an unwanted son-in-law. As time went by, Nathan moved back to his hometown to be closer to his daughter. He continued his efforts to see her and understood that he needed to work with a lawyer to gain official custody and arrange legal visitations. During this challenging time, he met with Crystal again. They had known each other since childhood, having attended school together. As teenagers, their lives took different paths. Crystal moved to the big city, dreaming of graduating from university. However, in her final year, she got married. Instead of pursuing a successful career, she enjoyed a happy family life and had 4 children. Unfortunately, over time, her marriage deteriorated, leading to a divorce. In 2011, Crystal returned to her hometown with her children. Crystal and Nathan, longtime friends, reunited at a crucial moment for both. Nathan was captivated by Crystal's children and admired how she interacted with them. Her boundless energy and optimism lit up everything around her, like a fairy. Nathan and Crystal got married in 2013. Nathan worked at the Lack and Industries warehouse, while Crystal started a small clothing business, opening a children's clothing boutique under her own name and selling handmade jewelry. The business was doing very well, which allowed them to afford a good lawyer to seek visitation rights or custody of Nathan's daughter from his first marriage. Madison was delighted with her father's new wife and her new siblings, and she felt completely happy in her father's home. This made Lita and Paula Westfall, Kristen's parents, very resentful and worried about losing their only granddaughter. In 2012, Kristen Westfall requested full custody of her daughter in court. With her parents' support, the custody battle dragged on for 2 long years. The Westfall family was hoping to gain full custody quickly, but Crystal's arrival in Nathan's life changed the whole situation. A complete family, a home, and a good job made a strong case in court, and Nathan was granted visitation rights with his daughter. In October 2013, the judge allowed Nathan and Crystal to have supervised visits with Madison. On January 18, 2014, Nathan and Crystal arrived at Mount Carmel Church for the Sunday service. After the service, they wanted to take a walk with Madison, who was 6 years old. They left the church a little ahead of the rest of the congregation to go get some gifts they had prepared for Madison from their car. A few minutes later, 3 loud gunshots rang out. Nathan and Crystal were tragically killed by gunshots to the head, shocking their small town with the brutal murder of them. Initially, the killings seemed senseless, but later investigations revealed a motive. The police conducted a thorough investigation at the scene, where they found a .30 caliber rifle and matching shell casings. The autopsy of Nathan showed he was also shot in the thigh with a 20-gauge shotgun. This discovery led investigators to believe there were 2 shooters, since it's unlikely that one person could have managed both weapons simultaneously. The investigators carried out a set of interviews with witnesses to collect information about the Maddox family and to understand what occurred. They spoke with church members, friends, and relatives of the deceased family. However, the most surprising aspect was the response from Nathan's ex-wife's family. Both Kristen and her parents, along with other witnesses, were summoned to give testimony at the police station. The attitude of this family really shocked the investigators. The Westfalls played up the tragedy so much that it seemed like they were hiding their happiness about the deaths. Paul Westfall was so stunned that he had a fit. He couldn't believe the news of Nathan's death and had to call emergency services. A grown man who spent years trying to cut Nathan out of his daughter's life was so devastated he suffered a seizure. Kristen was the first person interviewed, and her interview was somewhat unsettling. She was the only family member who remained calm and composed, even though she and Nathan had been together for a long time and had a child. Kristen shared some strange details about him, focusing only on the negative aspects of her ex-husband. She claimed to know who killed him, mentioning that Nathan was involved with dangerous motorcycle gangs in Montana. One day, one of the alleged gang members showed up at Nathan's mother's house and threatened to kill him. Although the story was partly true, the threat didn't materialize because a motorcyclist inadvertently broke his bike. It was also found out that the existence of the gang had been exaggerated to throw off the investigation. Moreover, as an alibi, Kristen stated that on the day of the crime she was at the supermarket with her dad, Paul, just a few miles from the church, and then they both went home. Surveillance footage at 10:57 a.m. confirmed they were at the supermarket. Paul Westfall told exactly the same story. However, because Paul was a hunter and owned a firearm, they tested his hands for gunshot residue, but the results were negative. Still, his reaction to Nathan's death, whom he openly hated, seemed very strange to the investigators, leaving them slightly doubtful about his sincerity. Interviews with Nathan's loved ones over a short period revealed that he was in a custody battle with his ex-wife Kristen Westfall and her family over their daughter. After a long and bitter court dispute, Nathan was close to gaining custody, which the Westfall family strongly opposed. This intense conflict could have led to retaliation, but the police lacked concrete evidence to arrest anyone from the Westfall family. The family consisted of 4 people, and 2 of them could be the shooters. Investigators were still not convinced by their story and were trying to determine which family member fired the shots that killed 2 people. Regardless of whether it was a hired assassin, the investigators took a different approach and decided to focus on the main figure of the controversy, little Madison. After all, her safety was at risk, and she was still with a family that could be dangerous to her. Police officers and Child Protective Services, CPS, arrived to take the girl from the Westfalls' home, but were met with strong protests and anger. Due to the actions of the older Westfall family members, a search of the house was conducted. During this search, the police made a shocking discovery. A gun was stored on a shelf in a room where it could be easily reached. The search concluded with the discovery of illegal drugs throughout the house. In 2013, Kristen Westfall was charged and arrested for possessing a controlled substance. She faced repeated arrests, suggesting she couldn't be a fit mother to Madison. When Kristen went to jail in early 2013, her parents were given temporary custody of her daughter and did not permit Nathan to visit Madison during this period. Kristen defied Child Protective Services orders and continued living in the same house and sharing a bed with her young daughter. Even in 2014, despite court injunctions, she remained with her family and saw her daughter daily, disregarding the court's directive to move out. In March 2014, Child Protective Services got involved in the custody case of Madison, less than 2 months after the tragic murder in front of the church. Authorities arrested 4 people: Kristen Westfall, 29, her younger brother Cameron, and their parents, Paul and Letha Westfall. There was no direct evidence of their guilt in murder. The interrogations didn't yield the expected results, so the police resorted to deceptive tactics to pressure the most vulnerable member of the Westfall family, 18-year-old Cameron. If his guilt was proven, he was told that all his family members would face life imprisonment and the direct perpetrators of the murder would receive the death penalty. Cameron was young and kind-hearted. He was really scared and quickly agreed to cooperate with the investigation, revealing all the details of what had happened. The crime against Nathan and Crystal turned out to be meticulously planned by the Westfall family to completely exclude Nathan from the role of a father. The Westfalls were worried and carefully planned a scheme to keep Nathan out of Madison's life. Nathan wanted to take care of his daughter on his own, but the Westfalls were unwilling to let him see her, much less grant him permanent custody. The Westfalls were really upset that their ex-son-in-law had gotten his life together and was living well. So, when the judge allowed him multiple visits, it became clear that he might win the case. This led Kristen to come up with a plan to get rid of him once and for all. Initially, Kristen tried to hire someone to kill her ex-husband, but when that didn't work out, she decided to do it herself with her father. On Sunday afternoon, the family usually attended church, and January 18th was no different. Letha Westfall and little Madison drove to the service at the scheduled time. Afterward, Letha had to hand Madison over to her father. Meanwhile, Kristen and Paul went to a distant store and pretended to be customers to appear on CCTV cameras, trying to establish a solid alibi, but they miscalculated the timing. Each family member had a specific role to fulfill. Throughout the entire period, they communicated via text messages, updating each other on Nathan and Crystal's movements. Letha, who attended the service, informed Paul when Nathan and Crystal were about to leave the church. She also the one who called 911 immediately after the murder. Cameron played a key role in hiding the evidence. He disposed of the gun used by his sister and father to shoot the newlyweds in the head near a remote church. He drove to a lake and threw away a bag of weapons. Cameron later decided to cooperate with the authorities and revealed that Kristen initially came up with the plan, which the family followed. He also showed investigators the spot where he had thrown away the murder weapons. Divers eventually recovered these items, confirming Cameron's statement. The police arrested Kristen, Cameron, and their parents, Paul and Letha Westfall, charging them with organized crime. Kristen and Paul fired the shots, while Cameron and Letha willingly assisted them. Since Letha was at the church during the incident, she clearly did not shoot Nathan and Crystal Maddox. However, phone records revealed that she informed her daughter and spouse of the couple's location as they left the church. Although Kristen and Paul pulled the trigger, Letha and her son Cameron were knowingly involved in the crime. The trial was noisy and prolonged. Each Westfall family member was tried individually. Paul Westphal pretended to have seizures and was deemed mentally unfit, staying in a state psychiatric hospital for evaluation. In May 2014, a judge ruled Paul incompetent, but this decision was reversed 4 months later. Facing with threat the death penalty for the murders of Nathan and Crystal Maddox, Paul and Letha accepted a plea deal with the district attorney's office to avoid execution. Paul accepted a plea deal from the prosecution, resulting in a life sentence without the possibility of parole after pleading guilty to the charges. Letha also accepted a plea deal and admitted to participating in organized criminal activity, avoiding a trial. She is currently imprisoned at Mountain View Prison in Gatesville and will be eligible for parole in 2044. At the time of her sentencing, Letha Westphal was 54 years old, which means she may spend the rest of her life in prison. Kristen is the third person from the Westphal family to be tried in this case. During the trial, she maintained her innocence against all charges. She claimed that her entire family was unstable, and she was the only one honest about it. When her family members, Letha, Paul, and Cameron, testified against her in court, she couldn't confront them directly. Kristen Westphal's final trial and sentencing started in August 2016. The reason for killing Nathan and Crystal was related to the custody of Madison. Kristen strongly opposed Nathan having unrestricted access to see Madison. She couldn't bear the thought of him being happy. Kristen wanted to manage the communication between her daughter and Nathan herself. Through their daughter, she aimed to control everything he did and felt. The trial lasted more than a week. Ultimately, with overwhelming evidence against her, the jury took 8 hours to find her guilty of capital murder. In a Brazos County courtroom, attorneys and the judge reviewed final motions for the woman. Kristen was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, nearly 9 months before her father pleaded guilty and received the same sentence in May 2017. Kristen Westphal is currently serving her sentence at the William Hobby Women's Prison in Falls County, Texas. Paul, Letha, and Kristen Westphal were charged with 2 counts of murder. However, the youngest family member, Cameron, was only charged with 2 counts of tampering with or fabricating physical evidence. Cameron pleaded guilty to 2 counts of third-degree evidence tampering. The judge postponed his sentencing based on Cameron's agreement to testify against his family. He could face up to 10 years in prison for each charge. He was reportedly not involved in the shooting, and his mother was not involved either, as she was at the church when the crime happened. However, phone records indicate that she texted her husband and daughter while the Maddoxes were getting ready to go home. Cameron is currently imprisoned at the Huntsville Correctional Facility in Huntsville, Texas, and is expected to be released in 2025.